Hello, everyone, and welcome to the WCFHL podcast Inside the Dub Expansion Draft Edition. As always, I'm Jim Dowd, and I am here with my partner, Andy McDonald, and we're ready to talk to you about what's going on in the league expansion draft today, go over a few things that happened last season, maybe look ahead a little bit. Andy, how are you feeling? It's been a while since last time we spoke.
Oh, feeling really good, Jim. Having a great summer here out on the lake with my family, beautiful children. Really being able to soak up the weather. But there's a time for vacation and there's a time for getting down to business. And right now, we're looking at the expansion draft with the Vegas Golden Knights, and really looking forward to catching up with you about your thoughts on what last season brought for the WCFHL.
Well, I think last season, another interesting year. Always a lot going on. When it came down to the end, we saw a couple familiar faces in the Cup final with St. Louis and Washington, and I know, a lot of people were hoping to see another matchup get in themselves. But I mean, when you got the two best teams, a lot of the time are going to be the two that make it in to that final, and I think those were the two best teams last year. So, another great year for Dennis, his eighth WCFHL Stanley Cup. That's just, I mean, I can't even believe it. Won almost half the championships, since the league started.
Really impressive run by Dennis Jorgensen. Yeah, pulled it out last year. Some great finds from some players who kind of punch above their weight there in the playoffs, I think. Francois Beauchemin, you got to figure leading the playoffs and scoring probably wasn't the odds on going into it.
Well, I guess that's why you acquire a veteran player like that sometimes. No one expected Bushman to do that in the playoffs, but he took that spot for Washington, ran with it, and helped lead him to yet another title.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that kind of Dennis has shown his ability to kind of pick guys up and put them in situations to help them succeed. So it's really not something that you can point too much at, other than coming out of that tough series against the Jackets in round two, gaining some momentum, and then really I think made the statement there in the round three against the Red Wings, if I remember correctly. I mean, Ante Stighal's team that he'd put together. Really, no joke. Strong team. I thought they would have given a really a good shot towards Dennis's Capitals team, don't you?
I thought that was impressive as well. I mean, I really thought that. I thought Washington would win, but I thought Detroit would push it at least. That sweep was really just. You're right. Making a statement is definitely the right way to call that, and that led them into that playoff series, the Stanley Cup final against the Blues, who just come off a couple tough series, a seven-gamer against the Avalanche. Kind of a shame to see the Avalanche still couldn't break through against the Blues. Maybe next year's the year. They had a really great team this year, but St. Louis went down early, was able to pull it out. Then a tough six-game series with the Kings, and led into that series with Washington. And it was a very close series, but Washington just got the bounces. Last four games ended same score, 3-2, all in favor of the Capitals, I believe. And that's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes they're close, and sometimes they're close, and then it's not really. So I mean, you look at that, 3-2 games, couple overtime games, and everything, but Dennis's experience really pulled it out there over Mike Marsh. But overall season 22. I have to say, big success for the WCHL overall. As I said, two of their kind of prize franchises going head to head. I know to the chagrin of a lot of teams a lot of GMs who had probably predicted that maybe this was the year that Bo Simpson or James Love would have come out of the Western Conference, and really, aforementioned Ante Stighal there, and the Buffalo Sabres in their own right, having put together the President's Trophy winning season. A lot of people, really thinking that they would have come down and made a big impact in the playoffs. Scott Cameron put together a nice, solid season with that team.
I think that's definitely right. A lot to look forward to this year after seeing a lot of teams are going to be building on what they did last season.
Yeah, no, it's going to be an interesting off season. So I guess that kind of takes us to the off season here. It's been a quiet but busy summer of sorts, if that makes sense. It kind of looks like on the ice, not too many changes as we open up here now with the expansion draft happening today, but. Kind of the head office of the league there with the essentially the David Stern of the WCFHL moving aside and the Adam Silver in Dylan Darby stepping in.
Yeah, really interesting move. there's been a couple times in the past where Bo has thought about, moving on into a more of a support role, and he finally found somebody in Dylan who he believes can come in and run the league to his standards. And so far, if this is any indication, his first few months as commissioner, he can do just that.
I mean, coming in, just infusing life into the WCFHL. I find great GM hires so far, from what I can tell, and of what I know of these GMs from my time in the league, and just knowing Jake Mattinson, even in charge of the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, he'd spent some time working within the wings of some of the other WCFHL franchises, and honing his skills, and he's I mean he's going to step in here in this expansion draft and really make an impact.
I agree. I'm very interested to see what he does. Again, the draft underway right now as we speak. Yeah, great to see a new infusion of talent into the league. Great work by Dylan to bring in these guys. We don't know that much about them yet, but we'll see they start to shape their teams as the year goes on. And just really great. It looks like the league is in a very good position to move forward this year.
It is. There's a lot of excitement stirring right now, and I don't know about you, but I'm expecting quite a few kind of draft deals, backroom agreements from what I've been able to tell, like what my insiders tell me.
Well, there's been so much going on in the lead up to this draft, and like in any draft, the draft is always the most exciting time of year for us who follow and participate in the WCFHL. So much always going on, so many moves, so many deals that Vegas made before the draft happened. There's always the potential of negotiations that have gone on. All around those negotiations, we'll see players move from one team and then to another that were drafted in the expansion draft. And I'm very interested to see how that all goes down in the next 12 to 24 hours after the draft is over.
Yes, certainly. I mean, really, there's not much of a historical precedent in the WCFHL for an expansion draft. I mean, it's occurred in the past, but not for a long time. And so, in the modern day WCFHL, for there to be an expansion draft like this, usually we've kind of seen a dispersal as being the most common means of a draft outside of the entry here in the WCFHL, and even that, not occurring this year with the new influx of GMs. Not really necessary given the balance among those teams that were inherited, but but yeah, no, it's going to be exciting to see who Jake Mattinson selects here, and looking forward to seeing how he interacts with the other GMs going forward. Um, I'm also excited here for we'll probably touch on it at the end, but about this entry draft, 2017 entry draft. It's going to be fun to see what David Rayfuse does with that first overall selection. It's been quite a while since he's had that pick. Strong New York team that he won the trophy with there in with New York back in season 17. But I'm going to be looking forward to seeing what he does with that number one pick. That's a team that's going to be on the rise. So I mean, I think the Eastern Conference there should be put on notice.
Yeah, I think some very, very interesting off season here in front of us. Starting today with the expansion draft. Again, like you said, there hasn't been one in a long time. I think these rules that are in place here are very good for this expansion team, especially in fantasy hockey. You want to see someone come in and be ready to, participate and be ready to contend a little bit. If they want to contend to rebuild a little, you want to make sure they get good assets in that draft. And I think these rules are great. I think there's a lot of very good players available. And I'm excited to see when he starts making picks, who ends up going first, or not first, I guess, but who ends up going from each team. You would think maybe some of the more exciting names would be announced early.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of big name talent available. I'm kind of wondering both in what kind of direction he's going to go with this team. If it's going to be old or young. If it's be a bit of a mix of both, it seems to me that he's veering towards the future, as kind of a lot of GMs in the WCFHL seem to do. There's another kind of qualitative impact, I guess, of this draft would be the impact on the free agency crop, where Vegas's 229 limitations aren't really that strong. You should be able to get some pretty solid veterans, and then kind of see how that impacts the general free agency pool. So I'm kind of excited to see, as I said, the outcome of this draft, and then also the reverberations throughout the WCFHL throughout the rest of the summer.
Agreed. Free agency is going to be very interesting. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of strategy he uses. If he's going to pick maybe more veterans, maybe then he can deal them. Has the ability to re-sign and deal them. Would give him a lot of negotiating power around the league, especially with the tough 229 rules. Good guys end up going becoming free agents. Good guys ended up on the expansion draft list, and it'll be interesting to see how Jake uses that capital to build his team. As far as the expansion draft in general, was there anyone that you were surprised to see exposed?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there were a couple guys on certain teams. You look at the you really look at the rosters, and Rick Nash is one on Philadelphia that his cap hit might be a little bit high for kind of what his value has been here in the recent season. But he was a big part of Greg Domino's team. So it's kind of a sad state of affairs to see him exposed. But when you got the depth and quality that Philadelphia Flyers team has, it kind of someone's got to go, right? I
Oh,
guess I
that's
suppose in some sense the same could be said about Patrick Marleau on the Blues. He was probably an impending UFA anyway, but I doubt that Mike Marsh is going to be happy to see him go.
Yeah, some of those teams had to make tough decisions when they were filling out those protection lists and makes for some very interesting picks. I thought the most interesting guy who was exposed was Darnell Nurse, exposed by Edmonton. Edmonton choosing to keep Chris Tanev over Nurse. I thought that was an interesting decision. I know Tanev a little older, excuse me. Nurse still has so much potential, being the seventh pick back a few years ago. That was very surprising to me to see him exposed, Andy.
Yeah, it could be a signal of intent from GM Alex Sutherland in Edmonton taking over from long-term Lawrence Bailey, who'd just been. I mean, we hadn't touched on this earlier, just in terms of we talked about the influx of new talent, but we hadn't really talked about the departures. And a couple departures this summer. Some impactful GMs, some vacant previous vacancies where GMs had left that were filled, but then also yeah, you look at the departures. Drew Barclay, someone who everyone really enjoyed dealing with. I think know was kind of held in high esteem. Um, and then you look Doug Shipolo, kind of a shorter term in the league, but by all accounts a strong general manager. Made some good selections there with kind of the Jake Virtanen picks and Jesse Puljujarvi, and um, he really wanted to build a strong group going forward around Subban and McDonough. It seemed so he kind of uh, ended up leaving, and now they have a new GM there in San Jose. So it'll be interesting to see what Ron Windsor does. But overall, with these departures and seeing how things are going, it'll be really interesting to see both what they bring and then also what the contrast was to those people who were in those roles.
Agreed, agreed. It'll be very interesting to see what Edmonton does. Edmonton always an aggressive team, always trying to contend, always very active. So Lawrence Bailey's big shoes to fill, not just from the GM perspective, but participation, and just had a great team. That's a great team out west, and it's nice for Alex to be able to take over and hopefully be able to come in and contend immediately.
Well, Lawrence has always just been the staple of consistency in the WCFHL. I mean, he's it's nice to see him be able to grab his title and his championship there in season 18, and kind of go down in history in the WCFHL. And he's really always kind of maintained a very very strong competitive roster. Top eight, top seven, top six team in the WCFHL historically, but without mortgaging the future. And so he leaves a really strong roster here for Alex Sutherland. So I look forward to it. I mean, you look at that defense with Hedman and Falk and Broden and Tanev, and a solid group of forwards. It's an exciting team to see taking over.
Agreed, agreed. Be interesting to see where they go. And we can move forward a little bit now towards the expansion draft. Looks like picks are starting to be announced. Let's take a look here. Start discussing this roster as the picks come through. Go through. Looks like everything's been announced alphabetically. We'll go through and take a look at these one by one as they come in. First announced pick from the Anaheim Ducks, Brett Conley, forward Brett Conley.
Wow, yeah, that's That's a nice selection coming in there. I mean, Dan Scambarelli in Anaheim. He's got a group there that he's confident moving forward with. He likes to build through the draft. That's one thing that we know about Anaheim here in the WCFHL.
No doubt about that. Conley, a few years ago, it's very high pick in the draft there. Been a little bit disappointing. Haven't really been able to provide the offense people thought that he would be able to provide. 25 years old now, but not a bad pick for Vegas. It's never bad to try to lean on some talent that used to be elite talent. Conley was an elite young player coming into the league. Derailed a little bit, maybe some attitude issues, some injury issues. If he can get back on track, 25 is not too old for him to make a long-term impact for this Vegas team.
No, absolutely not. I mean, if I remember Brett Connolly just as a prospect there in Prince George, I mean, he had 30 and 30 for Prince George. I believe he was the first 30 and 30 16-year-old since Patrick Marleau there in the WHL. If I remember correctly. So, I mean, that was a big season, but derailed a bit with some hip injuries and selected, highly touted into the draft here in WCFHL, but never really amounted to much. And you know what he has kind of been able to not turn into what his potential was as that 30 and 30 player in the WHL, turn into a nice depth player. So it's a decent pickup here for Vegas off that Ducks team. Someone of value who was exposed, and as you mentioned, still has that upside. Well, he hasn't hit it yet. You look at him and see him as a steady role player and someone who has some upside to punch in above his weight.
Agreed. Agree with all that. Now we'll get the next pick coming in from Arizona. Select defenseman, excuse me, Brett Pesce. Nice pick, nice young player. The third-round pick a couple of years ago has come in, played a lot of games in the NHL the last couple of years, proved that he deserves to be on the ice at just 22 years old. Nice building block here.
Yeah, I like that pickup. He's going to be big for them. Yeah, could play a big role going forward, and kind of fills an immediate need to be able to make an impact, but also one to build for the future. So it's a nice pick.
And we'll go with the next pick here coming through from Boston. Vegas goes ahead and they're going to select Dylan DeMello.
Yeah, Dylan DeMello's a guy here. He's a young fella. Was later round pick, but he'll be able to step in and help them. Probably not unsimilar to their previous pick. They're trying to get some depth on defense, and I think he's a guy who's probably going to be on that opening night roster, don't you?
I would definitely say, if you read Peter Beaton's article a few days ago on the WCFHL website, you'll see he definitely highlighted some of the defensemen that were available, posited that Vegas would try to go get a deep young defensive core, which looks like 2 picks now kind of bear that out. Nice to see that. Nice to see that move, and everyone knows defense helps to win championships. I don't know if it wins championships when you've got, maybe it does when you've got Bushman putting up 28 points in the playoffs. I was going to talk about Washington's great offense, but
yeah, that
a little bit there.
Well, sometimes we talked about that earlier. Sometimes you can't really tell what a good depth player is going to do when they come into the playoffs. So, Boschman set a precedent, but it will be interesting to see what DeMello can have that impact for the Vegas Knights in their first season.
Now we see the next pick coming through from Buffalo, from the Sabres. They go defense again. Vegas goes defense again and picks Danny DeKeyser up from the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, that's a nice pickup. He'll it's gonna be a hard time seeing what this defense is gonna look like. I know some inputs from Peter Beaton there, greatly appreciated, trying to piece together what could come out of this today. But DeKeyser, you gotta think is gonna be one of those better type of guys. It's gonna be on that back end for the Vegas Golden Knights when you look at a potential roster. Still youngish guy. Can play a lot of different roles for a team. Interested to see if he'll end up on the top pair there, or if we'll have some veterans selected later in the draft.
I think no doubt, even if he's top pair or not, we'll see DeKeyser play all year up there for Vegas. He is the kind of guy you can build around on your defense, a guy who can play, maybe not a guy you want on your top pairing forever, but can fill in there. Solid second pairing guy, definitely can jump between the second and third pairing, no problem. He can play a lot of games. He's never going to hurt you on the ice. So a nice player to see go there. And at 27 years old, a little bit of a veteran now in their quest for young defensemen already.
Yeah, yeah. When you compare it to the players who've already been picked, he ends up being kind of the veteran of the group. Uh, so I guess yeah, we move on from De Kaiser and well, it's selected Chris Tierney here from the Calgary Flames. This is interesting pick. I'd known Paul Martin was available for the Flames. So what do you think about that, Tierney over Martin? Do you think that value-wise that works, or given this D-core couple picks here on D, that kind of makes most sense?
Well, I think it really shows us that Vegas is going to look to go young on defense, start building around some young players. Obviously, there's still veteran defensemen available, but Martin, a good veteran defenseman, but not somebody who is going to be there forever. Maybe would have been some trade fodder, but it looks like what this really signals to me is they want a young defense core, and I like Tierney. Tierney's a good player. Will play on that third line, fill up the net a little bit once in a while. Another solid guy, solid two-way guy. So nice to see, they're building their foundation on defense. Nice to see a little foundational kind of third, fourth line guy.
Yeah, yeah. It should whether or not it'll be kind of a depth pick or if he'll be it'll kind of be a feature forward here for Vegas in the first season remains to be seen. But that's a guy that's going to keep a lot of value. Great guy too. I got to mention he's a guy who always in the gym. I know a couple of my former teammates there. I know he's one of the guys that's been working with Gary Roberts here on his strength a lot, and I mean Gary's a great guy. Gary, he gives me the down low on a lot of these players, the work ethic in the gym, and Chris is a guy that he can't say enough about. So I like that as a pick. It's going to be a big loss for the Flames, and um, going to be a good pick whether or not he slides up into the top six or if he's going to be a kind of a really got to be relied upon for Jake Mattinson. Now that we've had a bit of a chance to talk about Chris Tierney, we're moving through the podcast here, but I'd like to take a quick break to recognize one of our sponsors. Restaurant Brands International Incorporated is one of the world's largest quick service restaurant companies with more than $27 billion in system wide sales and over 23,000 restaurants in more than 100 countries and U.S. territories. RBI owns three of the world's most prominent and iconic quick service restaurant brands, Tim Hortons, Burger King, and Popeyes. These independently operated brands have been serving their respective guests, franchisees, and communities for over 40 years. I want to take this opportunity to encourage you to get on into one of these RBI brands, whether it be Tim Hortons, our former sponsor, Popeyes, or Burger King. Some great products, Jim, and that's a reading from one of our sponsors.
It's great to hear. A new sponsor is always great. What I wonder with those three great restaurants together, why is there no Tim Hortons, Burger King, Popeyes? I'd love to be able to get all three products in the same location. And maybe next time I ask your marketing guy what he thinks about that.
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that actually. I was trying to get some comp from them, send it over to the studios here. I know you're a big Popeyes guy. Get some chicken sent over, but no deal. I guess we're not up there yet on their top downloaded list. So a lot of
Well,
quality
hey,
content to deliver.
maybe after this we can get there.
That's right. Hopefully we'll get the click throughs. Where are we at here now, Jim?
Well, now we've heard during that great commercial break, we heard that they announced from Carolina, Vegas Golden Knights have selected Vladislav Kamenev, a Russian prospect, big-bodied prospect, a guy picked pretty high a couple of years ago. With Russians, you're always worried that they'll end up back in Russia in the KHL. He played a little bit in the AHL last season. Played a lot of games in the AHL last season, a couple games in the NHL. So Vegas is hoping this kid will stay in the U.S. and hopefully move up through their system.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting pick here. Big-bodied Russian, as you'd said. Always big to note. A bit of a Russian factor. Former seems around around the second round, but he he'd be a good player. It's first prospect pick taken by Jake Mattinson. He's taken some kind of veered younger with some of these defensemen, and now with first prospect selected. But solid pick. Interesting to see how he ends up shaking down for them. Moving on to Chicago. This is a team that has been quite competitive in the WCFHL recently, and Connor Williams, former WCFHL winner with the Carolina Hurricanes back in season 12. Someone who's kind of really sustained a high level of success in the history of the WCFHL, but maybe faltered a couple times in the finals. His Blackhawks have kind of made it there. Were a dominant force, and now they're kind of hanging around in the top four, top five, with either could kind of trade down and rebuild, or push for it this season and really go for a win. So how do you who do you think that they should take from this list? And yeah, what do you think?
Well, I'll tell you, they're just announcing the pick. Andrew Shaw is going to be the one
Oh
going to
wow.
Vegas from Chicago. I think that there was two choices for Vegas on this roster with Andrew Shaw or Kali Jarnkrok. Obviously both guys pretty similar players. Jarnkrok maybe a little younger, Shaw more experience, big game experience as well. So a guy who's also pretty young can help to lead Vegas. The guy who's going to give his all on the ice, be a good leader for your team there. Pretty nice pick for Vegas, I think.
Yeah, that is a nice pick. Nice to get a good character guy for them. He has his limitations. Has had some issues with discipline in the past. But if he reels that in, be a hard-working piece for this team. Yeah, I think that's a nice pick. As you said, it was really down between the two, it seemed. But Shaw's a nice selection.
Now we see the next pick, Colorado, coming on the board here. Announcement shortly. James Love has good success the last few years, playing in a very tough division versus St. Louis and Chicago, Calgary. The whole West so tough, the division and the conference. Colorado, excuse me, always contending, but just hasn't been able to push it over the top. So we'll see what happens with them today. They're announcing the pick now. Looks like no surprise. Vegas is going to take David Krejci.
Oh yes, Krejci did look to be a good player there. There were a couple guys that Colorado was unfortunately, when you have a kind of a solid team like that, you're not able to really protect everyone. A couple centers available. Krejci's a solid pick, not without his faults, but a good pick. Was an important piece for that team last year. Really ended up pushing the St. Louis Blues in the second round. Thought they might have pulled it out. Fought neck and neck down the stretch. It's kind of a tale of Colorado's kind of came into the league and said, we're going to rebuild. So what he did is he held on to his picks, held on to his players, kind of bearing the fruit of that with Chris Kreider and the Jaden Schwartz, and then has picked his spots to pick up guys like Peter and Steve Stamkos, and yeah, I mean he's a guy who has a strong team, has a vision for the team, and has done a good job, really aggressive in wanting to push for being one of the top teams in the West. But Krejci's going to be a loss. He had picked him up from at the end of the year there for RNH. Kind of picked him up from the Rangers. Ended up putting 7 points in the last 12 regular season games for the Avalanche. Uh, Kind of see how he fills that gap, whether he does it internally. He already has a Spezia and a tourist, so should be able to fill that role in the top six and the top nine. But no doubt that's a loss.
All right, and with that, they're announcing a couple more picks from
Oh
Columbus.
yeah.
Anton Forsberg. Oh, Anton Forsberg is the pick. It seems like a bit of a surprise. A trade was announced between Columbus and Vegas. I believe this is a result of that trade. Columbus with some good young players exposed, making sure to make a trade so that they will not have to lose any of those guys. Smart when you've got Granlund and Wilson exposed. Good move. Forsberg is a loss that will not hurt Columbus in their, kind of in their quest to keep contending.
Yeah, I mean Forsberg, yeah, as you mentioned, it's not really going to be an important piece there for them. But Columbus, and it'd be interesting to see because this was the first time that future considerations were made, that we kind of been seen floated, see it come to fruition in protecting their more valuable guys. Really wanted to keep together that team that swept the Flyers. I don't know about you, I was quite surprised to see the sweep, not necessarily to see them win, but to see the sweep over the defending champions in the first round. Uh, I mean, it's a core that they're going to want to keep together. Ended up pushing the eventual champions to seven, which is more than what kind of Mike Marsh and the St. Louis Blues can say. So, so yeah, it makes sense that you want to keep the core together. Establishes kind of the basis for what we're looking at in terms of future considerations. And second and fourth, just to kind of keep everything together. What do you think about that?
I think that's a good move. I do agree. We were surprised. You were surprised. I was surprised. I think no one was more surprised than Greg Domino to see Columbus sweep his Flyers in the first round, and I think that's a big reason why they make this move to let Forsberg go and keep this team together. They've been in a bit of a rebuild mode, accumulating assets over the years, and sometimes that accelerates as your players improve and have great performances. And I think Columbus saw that last season, and instead of taking a chance that they might lose one of those young guys or good young asset, they just pulled the trigger, and sent Forsberg to Vegas. So I think it was a nice move all around. And next we see Dallas. The selection from Dallas is going to be Andrew Kopp, center, a guy who's been kind of a grind. A bit of interest. Was this the result of a trade as well?
Oh yeah, we'll have to see if it flows through, filters through here. I don't get the idea that this was. I think this was kind of his take as the BPA. Kopp's gonna come in. I think kind of similar to Tierney, maybe. Kind of add some versatility there to the bottom six, and yeah, I guess Jake Mattinson just likes what he sees.
Well, no doubt, Kopp and Tierney. That's a pretty nice combination for a third line. Those are two good younger players, grinding players. And it is true, you can't just build the top of your team. You do have to build the bottom and the middle as well. So maybe this is just a nice move to help solidify the middle as this team builds out.
Yeah, there were a couple different players that were available from this team, from the Stars, but Kopp's a nice pick. I think that's a good pick for Jake Mattinson. It looks like the Red Wings, who are up next, a kind of an announcement's been made, which says that a first-round pick will be sent to Vegas, and in return, the Vegas Golden Knights will select a specified player. Any guesses as to who that player is going to be, or is it going to come through before we have an opportunity here?
Well, I think it's a surprise. That sounds like a deal that was negotiated right up until the last minute. And let's see, the picks being announced right now. It looks like they're announcing that Vegas will be drafting Joe Thornton.
Wow.
Thornton going to Vegas. What a turn of events. Is that right? Was that the Vegas pick? I see Thornton announced. I don't see Thornton listed on the Vegas roster as it's being updated.
Yeah, I mean that's quite the coup for Jake Mattinson to get the first rounder and Joe Thornton, but I guess Ante just really figuring Zdeno Chara as being the most important player. Maybe he wanted to protect him, protect some other players. Perhaps we're looking at a situation where he wouldn't have been able to re-sign him as a veteran anyway, and he's kind of looking to convince him to take him rather than someone who he would have re-signed. So yeah, I mean that's a very big ad, nice value piece. Older player, kind of looking at the balance here. You see the DeKaisers in the 27, 28 range. Not too many players in there. It's mainly prospects, younger players, and then the veteran like Thornton.
I mean, not bad, not bad. Nice pick. I do wonder if Thornton will be on his way out of San Jose, or excuse me, San Jose, of Las Vegas.
Yeah.
After picking Krejci, it'll be interesting to see, are these picks made to flip them to other destinations, or are they being made in order to kind of try to help build a contending team early on?
Well, that's an aggressive take. Yeah, if they're able to pick up a first, and then if they're trying to load up in here and make the playoffs in their first season, be a surprise move. But a relative unknown quantity in this main GM role. So really, I guess anything's an option. Wow. Yeah. So Thornton's gonna be interesting. Interesting to see if they end up going for it or not. And Edmonton Oilers are pick is coming here from Vegas, and it's Darnell Nurse is selected.
Well, I don't think that's any surprise. We talked about Nurse earlier in the broadcast. I was surprised to see him exposed at all, but I guess Edmonton GM, maybe he knows some about Nurse that we don't, saw something he didn't like, or maybe he just purely likes the guys he protected better. So a big surprise to see him exposed, and that there was no kind of back end deal to protect him. Maybe that's what they were going for, and negotiations kind of didn't go their way. But another nice pick for Vegas, another nice addition on that blue line, and all of a sudden this Vegas blue line looks maybe not like it's going to be the best in the league next year, but they've got some potential going forward.
A lot of pieces to move forward with. A lot of pieces.
Now
Um,
we see Florida pick announcement. Another prospect pick, second prospect picked from the Florida Panthers. This is Eric Foley.
yeah.
That's someone that I'm super familiar with. Foley, a late third round pick a couple years ago, playing in Providence. Had a very good season last year for Providence College, but not a big name to me.
No, not a big name, I don't think, but someone who we can select with hope for some upside. Got a lot of ability, and he's one of those players that kind of we want to watch what you say about him because he might come back and show you that if you underestimate him, he'll come up and show you what he can do.
Well, there's some good players who've come out of the college hockey system in the last few years, so be interesting to see what he does, most definitely.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that actually about the college system. I've been thinking about that quite a bit. It really seems like it's something that kind of more evolving lately. I don't know if it's the physical nature of the NHL now and kind of what that can do for you, preparing you for the rigors of the NHL season. Shorter season than in CHL, but probably get a little more time in the weight room, don't you think?
I think so, and I think that a lot of these universities, especially the major hockey universities, do put money into their programs. So you're getting good training. I also think that you're not doing the same kind of travel that some of these minor league teams are doing. So that may be better for some of these kids' development, not having to fly back and forth, bus back and forth all over the country or the world, every few weeks. Uh, Playing those regions, less travel, less games overall. I do think the college system does well for development of players, both physically and mentally.
Yeah, I mean I guess you have some backdrop with that, having played at Lake Superior in the CCHA, so I really enjoy getting your intake, but that's a very good point.
I'm gonna go for great experience for me. Really enjoyed my years there. And I think another thing, the way the game has opened up over the last few years, some of these players who go to college because they're small and skilled, but that's not going to translate right away into the minor ranks, not going to translate right away into the NHL. Well, now all of a sudden these guys are developing, and it is translating into the NHL
Hmm.
because of the reduction in the clutching and grabbing we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, a little more focus on offense. So
Yeah,
nice to see some of these guys making it.
yeah. Eric Foley's going to be someone to kind of keep an eye on. And also, I
Most
guess speaking of people to take an eye on, the Los Angeles Kings selection has just come in. It's Valery Nichushkin. He's someone who we've kept an eye on. I think particular interest over the last few years. Really burst onto the scene. Expected a lot of him, and faltered a bit. What do you think? Up still has upside, or is this kind of more depth pick? What do you think here?
Well, I think he's definitely got upside. Another player who we can say was definitely an elite player in his younger days. Definitely ran into a few roadblocks, just couldn't really put it together. Hasn't put it together yet. I know somebody that GM Bo was very kind of disappointed in. Bo has a special place in his heart, as many of us
Hmm.
do around the league, for these dynamic European players, Russian players, and you know a very high draft pick. All back in the KHL this year,
Hmm.
or put up some good numbers last season. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. Obviously, someone who still does have upside.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like another. Just kind of hoping an upside pick there, but you can't take enough of those, especially if you don't have a lot of options that jump out at you. So I like the kind of mix that Jake Mattenson's putting together here. No doubt he had the systems out in full force, kind of putting the conditional selections down and saying, well, if I pick this person, I'll be picking that person. I guess that's nature of the beast when it comes to expansion drafts. There's two more selections here that have come through while we were looking at the Nichushkin pick, and it was Vince Dunn from the Minnesota Wild and Brendan Lemieux, prospect taken from the Montreal Canadiens.
Well, another couple guys who are young players who are trying to build up prospect list up a little bit. I think this continues to show that the team Vegas is looking to build a young team. They don't want to jump in and contend. They haven't picked a bunch of veterans and tried to pull up a stacked roster. What they're doing is looking at these young guys, whether they be guys like Dunn and Lemieux,
Hmm.
a little less experienced guys like Nichushkin, Kamenev with high upside. if you hit a home run on one of these guys, that's huge. That's huge for your franchise. And they're picking prospects who, they hope will have a future there.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think when you come down to it, you'd rather just kind of draft for upside and hope to rebuild and get some high picks. So that's well, as we look more and more at it, maybe the Thornton pick and the Krejci pick end up pushing the other way. But it does seem like it's probably veering towards a bit of a rebuild and kind of jump starting that by grabbing some prospects. Looks like a trade was just announced. Nashville, a third in 2017 to Vegas for, oh, and they've selected, yeah, Nail Yakupov, which a bit of a fall from grace here. I know that, the kind of, uh, over the last few seasons, he's been a disappointment for Cole Richardson and really expected more um, of that player with the first overall pick in the 2012 draft. But it's official now. Off Nashville, selected by Vegas, kind of hoping a return for upside for Jake Mattinson, but at the same time picking up a third and for the guarantee that they wouldn't take any other player.
Well, another player who's worth it to take a swing at, talking about disappointing Russian wingers, there hasn't been one much more disappointing than Yakupov over the last few years. We all remember when he did come into the league. It's the first overall pick. His first NHL season, scored 17 goals in 48 games and never came close to matching that pace in all the following years. So, quite a fall from grace. As you said, 23 years old, so probably near the time where he's going to need to become an impact player to be able to stick around the league and have a chance in that role. If not, we may see him head back to the KHL, or he's going to end up down as a scoring leader in the AHL if he can't step up. So nice to get a third-round pick, and again, a guy who is kind of a swing for the fences. I can't say I have much confidence. You got to look on the bright side.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I'm not sure if you had this saying growing up. I had it in Strathroy, Ontario. We had it growing up. I'm not sure if you had the same in New Jersey, but we'd say "put up or shut up," and I think that now Yakupov, it's really coming to that point.
Yep, well, most definitely. That is one that crosses borders.
Yeah.
That put up or shut up. We do the same thing, and Yakupov, he's going to have a short time to show if he can put up, and if not, probably going to shut up.
Well, that's something that's funny. You mentioned that to kind of put up or shut up. Kind of when push comes to shove, you got to deliver. This is something that I don't. You'd mentioned it to me a little bit off air. I didn't know how much you wanted to get into it, but from my understanding, you're, reasonably Trump supporter. You want to chime in here, kind of talk about what he's been able to deliver as we talk about what Yakupov could deliver here for the Nashville Predators?
Well, I would say it's offensive to me that you would compare Nail Yakupov and his fall from grace to Donald Trump, President of the United States, Donald Trump. President Trump, if you'd have some more respect for him. He's accomplished so much, shaking things up in Washington, getting ready to build that wall. We're all ready for it here. I don't know if you have your finger on the pulse of the citizenry of the United States, but we're pretty firmly behind him.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we got a great boy up there in the north with Trudeau. Yep, he's a great guy. So Trump's kind of taking him to task a little bit there. So we're hoping to push back a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I see Yakupov. We're talking about needing to deliver, and I know you're a big fan, but we're wanting to see Trump deliver here, I guess too.
Well, I'll tell you, if Yakupov delivers like Trump's going to, Vegas is going to have a superstar on their hands.
Wow, that's an opinionated hot take by Jim Dowd. New Jersey. I'll kind of move us off the political spectrum here and focus on Thomas Greiss and that selection. You think Greiss will end up being here the starter for Vegas?
Well, it ostensibly kind of looks like it. There's not a ton of goalie talent available in this draft. And I think that for a team that is looking to rebuild, goalie talent is not a huge, concern in a draft like this. Obviously, you're not going to have a great young goalie available. You're not going to have a great young prospect goalie available. All you have is kind of these veteran guys nearing the end of their careers or kind of on the downhill. So I think this is as solid of a pick as you can get for what's available. We see a couple guys available in Chicago, Mike Smith and Louis Domingue. A few guys available throughout the league, but nobody who really jumped out. So I think this is a fine pick. I think it goes with the kind of idea that this team is not going to be great right away, And what they'll do, they'll look to either draft or trade for their future goalie. But I think that pretty good chance that he's going to be there in net to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, not, not so bad. Kind of middle of the road, I guess, middle of the road to lower goaltender. But as you mentioned, not really a priority. I've already kind of look at these teams in the WCFHL and kind of see when I look at the way that they put them together. Looking at what Dennis Jorgensen's done. I mean, obviously now he's got Braden Holtby, who's top goaltender. But and traditionally, a lot of these teams that compete end up addressing the goaltender position last. They end up kind of saying, okay, let's build our team and then we'll see what we get. I mean, Colorado Avalanche come to mind here with Roberto Luongo. Really nice ad for them a couple years ago, and yeah, it's really kind of saying, okay, well, we know what we can put together. How much goalie cap can we attribute? You go through each of the different teams that have won. Oftentimes they'll have a goalie, important goalie, say Martin Brodeur for the Calgary Flames back when John Marsh's teams with Nicholas Lidstrom and Duncan Keith and all those players were very strong. Was built around a goaltender who was a big part of the franchise. But oftentimes you can kind of just plug him in. So Jake Mattinson here, potential to just kind of pick up a goalie, hold him over, and then do the rebuild, and then plug someone in.
I think that's a great strategy for that part of the draft. You have to get a goalie somewhere. You got to fill that need. Someone's got to play in net, so it might as well be Grice. Now we'll see the next pick being announced here. Now from the New York Islanders, Vegas is going to take yet another young defenseman, Adam Clendening. What do you think of that one?
Nice pickup. Yeah, nice pickup. We're kind of filling the stables here. Was that a pick that was kind of free form, or was that pre-designated with a trade? Looks like, oh wow, looks like it was actually a first round pick to make sure that they'd pick Clendening. So
Wow,
that's
that,
kind of adding another first. So there's at least three for the Golden Knights here in their first draft. A lot
well,
of
that's
players available from Peter Beaton's team. I'm impressed with GM Peter Beaton. Very active. Likes to get in on trades. Knows the value of his players. Demands value when dealing. But that's really come to fruition. Really suspect he dealt that first to protect Derek Brassard, but now he's able to go Brassard, Couture, Ryan O'Reilly, Evgeny Malkin, Tyler Johnson. You know, really strong team, and uh, yeah, I mean, that'll be a loss for most teams, but maybe not for him.
well. I think that is a nice move for Peter. Again, when you have accumulated that much talent, sometimes you have to pay to keep it in moments like this, and
Hmm.
definitely better to lose Clendening there than a few of the names that you mentioned. A few of the exposed players again. Brassard, of course, probably the guy that he needed to protect. But yeah, and great move. Great to see this new Vegas GM making moves like this. Kind of holding some of these GMs' feet to the fire to make sure that he gets the best value out of kind of making some of these moves. Obviously, Brassard worth a first round pick to protect,
Yeah,
and to see that he's able to get.
kind of a later first likely here too. So, with the strength of the Islanders roster. Before we get to the next pick here for the New York Rangers, came from the New York Rangers, another ad. To read from one of our great sponsors, Vidal Sassoon Hair Products. At Vidal Sassoon, we believe that perfect beauty is different for every woman and that achieving it need not be a daily struggle. That's why we never mass produce and always tailor the look, considering the individual's unique features and needs when conceiving their cut and color. We never concoct styles that's just wash out, but cut a shape that stays in the hair, making it quick and simple to recreate every day. Realizing perfect beauty, individual and practical, is our goal. This is Sassoon. This is hair design. All right, so we're back at it. Let's take a look at who the New York Rangers. Oh, and it's Riley Smith. What do you think about Riley Smith?
Well, Riley Smith, another nice young player coming in to help out Vegas. Just another guy. They've gotten a few of these forwards in their mid 20s. Obviously Smith a little bit more potential than some of the other guys they've picked up, uh, Tierney and Kopp. But a very, very nice player, a guy who's proven that he can hit that 20 goal mark,
Hmm.
and in roles where he was maybe not the focus. So maybe someone who's going to get a little bit of a chance with Vegas to have a little more of the spotlight shined on him, and maybe he'll come through.
Tough guy to put a finger on in terms of his value. Really, like to know what to expect, whether or not he'll be a big name guy or a big performer, or if he's going to kind of be able to sustain that level. So yeah, I like it. I like it as an upside pick. The Rangers are a team that coming off of I believe they were first overall pick last year, grabbing Austin Matthews. So it's it's a team that maybe hadn't had as much pro roster depth as a lot of teams. So you're getting a guy like Riley Smith, not too bad, right?
Agreed, and I think that Smith, one of the great things about him, he's a guy who's never going to hurt you when he's on the ice. So even if he proves that he's not going to be a scorer, if he can't hit that 20 goals consistently, he's still a guy who's going to score 10 goals and be responsible in both ends and have a positive impact. So I think it's a good pick all around.
Yeah, absolutely. Who do you got? Who do you got coming up from the Ottawa Senators?
It looks like
Uh,
pick is being announced right now, and they're going to grab Damon Severson from the Senators, yet another young defenseman. Obviously, we thought that was a theme that might be established. We saw the first few picks being established. Now, this is no doubt the theme of this draft: build up this young defense for the Golden Knights.
Oh yeah, no. A lot of people have said it. I know throughout hockey, just to say you can never have enough defensemen, right? Never have enough defensemen. So this is a guy who's gonna, like I said, come in, maybe end up playing with the Kaiser. I'm not, not too sure what they'll end up doing, but uh, you know, good, nice pick. I like that pick. Although I will say this, I just want to throw this out there. It's something that just hearing in evaluating these deals and kind of looking at it, I'd be interested to see if the Vegas Knights end up doing anything differently with their branding here to help go these far. They got this great new logo here, but I don't know if you've been to the main page here on the WFHL page, and yeah, a little blocky with the white. Maybe get a little transparency going on the Vegas logo. What do you think?
I mean, I'll tell you, it looks like an expansion logo
Yeah,
as it is posted right now.
yeah, it's kind of
You
added
know,
in there.
Well, yeah. What can you do? We want
Yeah,
the biggest Knights to come in. We want them to get respect right away. And one way to do that is a sleek look on the WCFHL website. And
yeah.
hopefully we'll see that upgrade made soon. They're proving with their draft picks they deserve to be considered.
I'll say this. I mean, Bo Simon, Dylan Darby, both of them done tremendous work throughout the summer. I'm imagining that they're just far too busy to be able to be, kind of put that detail into this. But looks are a lot, so we'll see what they end up doing with this logo. But the Vegas Knights, it's a good team, very solid, sound team.
Looks good so far. I guess they may have a little bit more on their plate than we do here, just sitting around talking hockey all day. But what can you do? We're fans too, and we like to say what we like to see.
Fair enough, but if you'd seen the size of the pickerel that I pulled out of that lake today, you'd say otherwise. How about
Oh
that,
gosh,
Jim?
well I appreciate you taking your time to come in and do this podcast.
Oh yeah, no, it's always a joy getting on here and talking to you.
Right back at you, my friend. Now we see another pick being announced here. This time from the Philadelphia Flyers. They're going to grab Rick Nash, Big Dick Rick. So someone who has proven to be a big time goal scorer in the past. And I wonder if this pick also signals maybe a move where they're going to look to trade him to a contender right away, or maybe if they'll keep him around.
Could hold on to him, yeah. Say, oh, we're gonna hold on to him, see if he kind of bumps up his stock again back to his former form, or if they just see a lot of value in him, kind of last year of his contract, be able to flip him away for something. Seeing what they've done now, I wouldn't be surprised if you're able to get a first round pick for a guy like Rick Nash. He's already picked up two, loading up. Uh, lot of different things that he could do here.
Well, I think when trade channels do open after this draft is over, Nash is a name that's definitely going to be discussed. And now we'll move on. Next pick being announced here from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Looks like Vegas is going to select. If you had to guess what position, what would you guess?
I would say a young defender.
Another defenseman, Ryan Murray,
Oh
is
wow.
the name announced, headed
Yeah.
to Vegas now. So one more on the pile. This young defense is all of a sudden shaping up to be one of the more impressive young stocks in the league.
Yeah, it is. It really, filling up the cupboard here. The young defenseman, Ryan Murray's another guy where I think he was trying to bank on upside. We've seen the Nichushkin pick. We're seeing him take guys. Brett Connolly. I mean, even with his first selection, kind of saying, these guys are supposed to be really good, and I think they can put it together. He's going to be strong. A lot of confidence in his coaching staff, his training staff there in Vegas, and if they can piece it back together and put Ryan Murray back together again, if it makes if you will, then that could be quite the selection.
I think so too, and I think that with Murray, he's a guy who, again, another very high pick a few years ago. The second pick in I believe 2012, and just 23 years old. Sometimes defensemen take a little bit longer to develop
Hmm.
than offensive players, and he's proven that he can skate in the NHL and the WCFHL, that he can play in the league. And at just 23, I think there's still a lot of upside left there for him to develop.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. Another guy, I guess. Oh, well, DSP taken here from San Jose, Devontae Smith-Pelly. Yeah,
Well, I'll tell you, that's somebody who everyone loves to see that jersey. Something about that name on the back of the jersey, just everyone always enjoys it.
yeah,
And another guy, kind of sticking with their theme, seems to be young defensemen, and then kind of grinding
yeah.
young, mid-20s wingers. So nice pick. Another guy who's gonna, that third slash fourth line is gonna look pretty intimidating right away.
Yeah, and then you add that together with what they've picked so far for the forward group, not too bad. Oh, speaking of forward group, just selected Patrick Marleau here from the St. Louis Blues. So you're looking at Marleau, Thornton, Krejci, looking at Shaw, things these types of guys. Not so bad. Not so bad coming out of it with the bottom six talent that they have, young decor, a lot of picks. What do you think?
Well, this is an interesting pick again. Another guy who I still think that their move is going to be to start dealing these guys
Hmm.
to contending teams. But all of a sudden, with the names that you mentioned, and then this young defense core, I mean, you keep these guys together, and who knows if a couple of these guys can take off and have a big season. All of a sudden, Vegas is, instead of looking at a top 10 pick, they're looking at a top 10 finish in the league.
Wow. Yeah. It's funny when you say that. Coming into today, I wasn't really sure what to think. And if we're looking at the outcomes, they're pushing for top 10 and with some future pieces moving forward. Wow. That'd be something. Or they're looking to really set themselves up. Remains to be seen. We'll kind of follow it out through the rest of the day. But another trade coming here, third and a fifth for 2017 for they selected Cody Eakin, specific player. Now, is there a player in the WFHL who really screams expansion player to you like Cody Eakin does? He's one of these guys who you can only protect a certain number of guys in your team. Obviously, you get 10 guys. Maybe he's number 11, but both good enough that any team that can has a chance to pick him is going to pick him. But maybe not one of those top guys that you're going to always pick every time, select every time, and protect. What do you think?
Well, I think Eakin is a guy that I followed closely in his younger days in the WHL and in the AHL before he came into the league. So many comparisons of him to players, high leadership and high production players. Doug Gilmour is a guy I remember him being compared to early on in his career in the WHL, and
Yeah.
obviously he's not borne out those abilities so far, but he's only 26. Has had some good seasons, proves that he can get
Yeah.
into those high teens and goals in the league, and another player who maybe, if given the right opportunity, could step up and be more of a difference maker.
Yeah, he absolutely could. I mean, he's kind of took a step back last year, I think, but had that kind of pedigree coming into the WCFHL, uh, playing for Canada World Juniors and all that, and he's ugly as all sin, but geez, he got good two-way game, and he's a guy that Vegas can really rely on here.
We have another pick, looks like being announced here, and from Toronto, they'll grab one more young defenseman, Connor Carrick, heading to Vegas from Toronto.
Connor Carrick, yeah, Connor Carrick from Toronto. Dylan Darby is I think he's a big fan of Connor Carrick, so it's funny. Oh wow, sends over quite a bit there. Uh, Dermott, Bebo, and Zirkles in the sixth, just to protect Bozak, Hyman, and Shoshnikov. So I guess it's Leafs love there in Toronto. He's given up Connor Carrick, a guy, maybe comes in a little bit underneath some of the other defensemen that we've seen here, but still consistent and still of a kind of a youngerish defenseman. He did well in the AHL, I think, for a bit there. Came up and fights his way through for the WHL, but has a bit of upside, but not a guy that I think, given that the core that Dylan Darby's put together in Toronto, with the John Klingbergs and I think he's got Hampus Lindholm and a couple other guys there. Uh, yeah, not the type of guy that he's going to miss too much.
Well, and the great thing about being a GM is you can always trade back. You know, who
Oh,
cares?
that's right.
We've seen many players move players they liked or players from their favorite teams, and then just a few weeks later, there he's back on the roster. So
Yep.
always a possibility as well.
Wow. Yeah, that would be something. Oh, well, here's two more picks here coming in while we were going over these ones. Two veteran defensemen, Alex Edler taken from the Vancouver Canucks and Trevor Daley from the Washington Capitals. Thoughts on those?
Well, if they're going to stick around, that's not bad. A couple of veteran guys to lead that young defense core. Again, this is kind of going with that theme. They've picked a lot of older guys and then a lot of younger, more raw players. So it'll be very interesting to see. Those are good guys for the young players to learn from, and also players who will hold some value on the trade market. So pretty solid picks there also.
Yep. Yeah. I do like those picks. A good trade value, like you said. Uh, Edler and Daly, both of them able to contribute to pretty much any team in the WCFHL, I think. The last pick here is Brian Boyle. Brian Boyle, taken from the Winnipeg Jets. Really, really coming together. Couple strong top six players, veterans taken, a lot of depth. Brian Boyle's another guy, got a veteran guy. Maybe probably bump Turney down. Maybe be the third line center. Good team, good, nice looking team that Jake Mattenson's put together here for the Vegas Golden Knights. It's been an exciting day. I've been really had a lot of fun following along. You look at the final product. You got Krejci, Eakin, Boyle, Shaw, Smith, Pelly, Marlowe, Nash, Thornton, Smith, Connolly, Yakupov. A lot of D. A lot of options here.
100%. I think that the really interesting thing now is going to be is to see this next 24 to 48 hours. I think is going to be a bit of a frenzy. I don't envy Jake Manson's position. I'm sure it'll be great fun, but man, those emails start coming in, those text messages, those phone calls, and it's a lot of work. So he's going to be he's going to be busy over these next few days, and I'm really interested to see what this roster looks like 48 hours from now. Any players on the roster that you think will definitely still be around after a couple of days?
I think there's a couple guys here that I think he's probably, looking at saying, I like this person as a future piece. I think he'd be smart to approach this team to just say, where I can get the value, I will. So he's looking at it. He's selected these guys. He's still trying to figure out if he really wants to push for it, lock guys in, or if he's gonna, kind of strip down and rebuild. And I mean, he's picked up a couple firsts, maybe pick up a couple more, and that gives you a super strong base to automatically jumpstart and join those rebuilding teams that you see. Uh, but yeah, I mean, you look through it. I think some of the less, not really the high quality veterans of the Thorntons and the Marlows and the Krejcis and those types of guys, they might draw the most interest from some of the competing teams in the league. But you look at the guys like Ryan Murray and Darnell Nurse and that. I think those types are probably the types that he's going to hold on to. Tough to see someone else giving them top notch value for the potential that those people hold. And yeah, what about you?
I will definitely agree. The two of those names I was going to say already, Nurse and Murray, and I think I'd add Severson to that. I think those three guys are very strong, young defensive core to build around. And again, I would be surprised if someone would offer the value that they have to this franchise kind of right off the bat. So I think those three guys will be on the roster for sure. Would not be surprised at all to see them go into the season with all three and even finish out the season with all three. I think that's a very strong little core there. I think the rest of the players, it's a bit of a crapshoot. I think that some of these top forwards, it's so many high-priced top-tier forwards. That's going to be tough. You don't want to jump into a rough situation financially right off the bat with a new team like this.
Hmm.
So I would not be surprised at all to see a couple or all of those guys dealt. You mentioned Marlowe, Krejci, Thornton. I think that those guys, I would be very, very surprised. Nash as well to
Yep.
see them last the season. And even, I think a couple of them, maybe all four of them, I think over the next few days could be dealt. Be interested to see what kind of value he looks for those guys. Coming into the draft right now, this point in the season, draft picks are probably at their highest value.
Hmm.
As the year moves on, these older players, especially if they're on decent contracts or contracts that, well, it depends on what people are looking for. You never know, but contracts that won't handcuff for too long, but also might not be too short. Those guys will be real valuable near the end of the season as the trade deadline approaches, and the contending teams look to add players. So be interested to see what kind of strategy he uses. But those top tier forwards, I can't see those guys around for the whole season.
No, yeah, that I like that analysis. It really it comes in line with what I think, kind of brought up to some things that I hadn't actually really thought of there. But yeah, overall, it does make sense for an expansion team like Vegas. Is there anything else that you kind of think, we should be focusing on or thinking about going into, looking forward to the expansion draft and trade freeze being lifted and re-signings and all the exciting things that the rest of the WCFHL offseason has to provide?
Well, I think that these next few days are going to be just an infusion of excitement. We've seen a lot of trades go through and posted already on the message board with the special, trading period where Vegas could negotiate and no one else could, or no one else could post anyway. But there's negotiations going on. It's going to be on fire, I think, the next few days as far as posting trades, players moving. So I'd say get ready there, Dylan and Bo. There's going to be a lot on these next few days, which is only a good thing in a place like this. We want to see as
Well,
much participation as possible. And I'm excited myself to see. I'll be hitting F5 every few minutes up on this message board.
Well, I just tell you, you say get ready, Dylan and Bo. I think Dylan is ready and he's ready to rock because I just saw a trade posted here from Dylan with the Maple Leafs here with the New York Rangers. Not sure if you've had a chance to see it, but it's coming down the wire. I wouldn't mind announcing it. It's Rangers and Leafs. David Pastrnak going to the Rangers with Hampus Lindholm, Alex Nylander, and Connor Brown for Austin Matthews and Marcus Kruger. So, wow, Matthews, top rookie coming in. He's going to be a big impact. Leafs, you already saw them kind of pay a premium price to protect guys like Shoshnikov, Hyman, and Bozak, and uh, and now to add Matthews. I mean, that's going to be a pretty formidable top six that he's got, top nine, even with Bozak and Kadri and Matthews in there, Marner, Nylander. Still got good depth on the wings and nice D. So wow, what do you think about that? That's a big trade.
I love that deal for the Leafs. I think that it's a good return for the Rangers, but with a prospect like Matthews, the sky really is the limit. And you do have to pay a premium to get a guy like that. Many people have learned that in the past. We've seen
Hmm.
top tier young players go for this kind of package, kind of over and over again. It'd be interesting to look back and see which ones worked and which ones didn't. But I think for a deal like this, it's market value. It's what you expect to have to move a
Hmm.
couple of top tier young players in Pastrnak and Lindholm, very very high level guys. Brown as well, and Nylander. I mean that's quite a haul. But Matthews, when you're 18, 19, you score 40 goals. It's you're going to demand that kind of package and. A really great deal. I think, definitely for the Leafs, I think he's a young guy, a young, real cornerstone to build around. And then the Rangers, as they kind of rebuild, it's nice to get a little depth.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't get a high-end player who has the ceiling of Matthews, but they got quite a few guys who will contribute.
Well, you look at Pasternak, great upside. He could just continue to establish himself as kind of one of the top producers here moving forward in WFHL. So you like that from a points perspective, maybe even comparable to a Matthews, but maybe you don't get the all-around play that the center position brings. You look at the Rangers, maybe they're in the position to draft high and draft high again, pick these guys up, get a nice pick, grab a center, whether it be in one of the drafts coming up here, or if they get one through trade, reacquire a center. But then they'll be able to move forward with a good group, as you say, kind of depth guys. And you hate to say depth guys because look at Hampus Lindholm, you can see him on a top pair, David Pastrnak as well, and then Alex Nylander in his own right, he could come in and make a big impact. I know for Dylan Darby, I imagine it was. Difficult for him to move Alex. I know Will had strong feeling, really excited to have him there alongside of him in Toronto, but moving him out, pretty happy to get Austin Matthews. So yeah, that's a big first trade. Kind of set the table here for the next month.
That's right. That's right. And so moving forward, anything else that you'd like to cover before we sign off here? Maybe a little expansion draft, or excuse me, maybe a little entry draft talk?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot to go on here before the entry draft at the end of the month. I think we're gonna plan here for a schedule to set up for it. May try to get a little live action inside the Dub Live. We'll see if we can get that going. Requires a little more upfront investment, so we'll be getting back in touch with our BI and see if we can get a little more funding for that. If not, then we'll be back to the podcast format. But be back in touch for the entry draft and kind of look a preview for re-signings and try to do a preview for the next season. Recap what's happened in we'll say the last month, but what is the next month from now?
That's right. Well, I'll be interested. I want to know one thing. The top of the entry draft. Well, I want to know two things. First of all, uh, what do you think happens with the first pick? Do you think it gets traded in the WCFHL, or do you think it stays with Montreal? And
Yeah.
second question, who do you think goes first? Who do you think they pick?
Well, I'd say it's going to stay the same. I know he's traded in the past. Was able to pick up a guy like Carey Price there. He posted a little bit of a recap on that trade that he'd done with the St. Louis Blues. That was a big pay, especially now we see what Taylor Hall's done. Hall ended up being flipped there for the Blues, I believe. But yeah, that was a big trade being able to get Carey Price. So. I think he's probably not going to get that type of return, and he's going to look at it and say, you know what, we're going to grab Nico Hischier here. I think he's going to take Hischier. I think he's going to see the upside, and maybe not think that Patrick will translate to the dub quite as much, and grab the upside of Hischier and just kind of run with that. That's what I'd say.
Well, I like that. I think that I agree with that as well. I think that Aisha is going to be the top pick in the draft, and I'd be pretty surprised to see Montreal move out of that spot. However, I'd be less surprised if it was moved to Vegas, considering the draft capital that they've acquired. If they really love Hashir or
Hmm.
Patrick at the top, they have a couple picks they could deal to jump into that top spot.
Even moving up from number 5, I don't know if it'll take that much, to be honest with you. I mean, Hischier's great, but you still get a lot of different options there at number 5, and he's got a couple picks now he can use as bait. Or not to mention players. I mean, so he's got a lot of options. So David Rayfuse is not one that's been known to shy away from a deal. So any other thoughts here, Jim?
Well, I think that about wraps it up. I think that we're looking forward to a great season. Again, as we talked about last season, we ended very strong. Nice to see the transition going smoothly so far. At the top, a great day. Always draft days, always exciting, always great to have any kind of draft, and nice to have another one coming up here in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you here, Jim. Looking forward to chatting again at the end of the month and kind of seeing what the action is over the next few weeks. Hope you enjoy your few weeks. I know you're there. Say hi to Sherry there for me.
Will do. I think maybe maybe we can get a couple bottles of Vidal Sassoon. I'll get her going on it.
Oh yeah, no, I'll check it. I mean, who's over there is Clark. Clark. Back in the days, used to work in the back rooms at in the Blues organization. Clark's over at Vidal Sassoon here now. He's former
Oh,
great
sure,
friend. Yeah,
sure.
so he's kind of got to hook us up. So I'll see if he can kind of set us up with um, a bit of a deal. Maybe save us some bucks on the Christmas gifts for the wife, if you know what I mean.
Hey, well, I always like that.
Great. Well, enjoy the summer.
You do the same. Great to talk to you, and we'll speak in a few weeks.
Oh yeah, have a good one.
You as well.